once again, it's time for another episode of Jason's Game Room, the only podcast on YouTube that features everything from the gaming world. Board games, CCGs, dice games, video games, tabletop games. If it has anything to do with gaming, I will talk about it on this show. So be sure to tune in all the time so you can keep abreast of what's going on. Now, today's show was supposed to delve back into the world of video games and go on about a few things, but something has happened in the world of customizable card games recently that I just have to talk about because it strikes a chord with me as I've experienced this firsthand, which I will get into later in the show. What I am talking about is something that Wizards of the Coast has just done recently, and if you don't know, Wizards of the Coast is the big gaming conglomerate that came out with Magic the Gathering back in 1993, which was one of the first, if not the first, customizable card games on the market, and therein is where the problems lie right now. So what has happened was that on a weekend where there were tournaments going on, mainly Friday night and Saturday night Magic games, as well as some mini tournaments that are able to be held under the current circumstances, Wizards of the Coast came out with a rule change very, very late on a Friday that ended up banning a couple cards. I'm not going to get into the actual cards because this is more about the act of the banning that drives everyone crazy that I'm talking about. But they banned a couple cards that a lot of people apparently had in constructed decks for certain types of gameplay, and as you can imagine, no one found out about it, even with the internet. It wasn't something that was broadcasted until late on the Saturday when a lot of people were already sitting in their chairs at a tournament waiting to play, and then the word came out. And of course, you don't always have time to rebuild another deck when you're sitting in a tournament. You can bring extra cards with you, but a lot of tournament rules are very stringent and time-based, and you can't just sit there and make a deck in 5 minutes. It doesn't work. And speaking from experience, it takes time to make a very good playable deck. And a lot of those players had to leave the tournaments, from what I've heard. And there's a lot of unhappiness and anger going on. There's a lot of discussion on Twitter right now. People are flaming. They're taking aim at Wizards of the Coast and their lack of timing on this. And this has apparently been happening the past few years, which is surprising because the first long while of Magic the Gathering, from when it came out in 93, easily into the mid-2000s, they were the epitome of on-time news updates, if there was anything added to the ban list. I remember a time when they would tell you a week or two in advance if something was banned, and they'd make sure it was in the middle of a week so that if there was a tournament coming up on a weekend, you'd already know about it for a few days, even back then. And they would have it published in the card game magazines well in advance so that people like me that depended on the magazines back in the day, we're talking mid to late 90s, before the internet was huge, we would find out about it ahead of time, or we would ask the people that ran the comic stores and the card shops because they would be told ahead of time. So as you're buying more product to add to your collection and your constructed decks, they would tell you. But as of late, Magic, through Wizards of the Coast, has gotten really, really bad at this. They tell people late, they ban cards without letting it get out, and people are left picking up the pieces, especially having put aside time to go to these tournaments hoping to get a shot at the main grand prize, only to be turned away or having to leave their seat because of Wizards of the Coast. Now, Wizards of the Coast is not the first company in collectible card games to do this. You may recall a company called Decipher, which for the longest time produced the Star Trek customizable card game, which I was heavy into and still am up until this point. For the first bunch of years, there were tournaments sanctioned by Decipher, and they were good. If there was anything going on with a banned card or rule changes, you would know in advance, like everyone else was doing. As someone that attended a couple early tournaments, everything was fine back then. There was ample time for people to find out what was going on with Decipher, the game, the cards in the game, gameplay, rules. It was great. And then one day, I went to a tournament. You might have heard this story before. This was that same tournament in a mall held by the local card shop, and at the time it was the biggest tournament in town, because they were granted the right to sanction Star Trek customizable card game and Magic the Gathering tournaments in the area of the mall where they're at. And this was a big thing. And unbeknownst to us people who showed up with constructed decks, there was a card combination that was banned the day before. And again, this was back before the internet was huge, and a lot of these companies had websites, so you couldn't find out. And even the owners of the card shop, and these guys were great, the guys that used to own and run Bayfield Collectibles, because they would always tell you ahead of time, they didn't even know about it till after the tournament started. Word got out, and they actually made a phone call to confirm, and the judge came over and told everybody. And this is the reason why I had to end up leaving the tournament in the second round, because the kid I was playing immediately jumped up and said, Judge, this guy's got banned cards. And upon walking into the tournament, these cards were not banned, and if they were, we weren't told about it. And I was unceremoniously kicked out of the tournament for having the banned cards. I don't blame the guys from the card shop running the tournament. I blame Decipher wholeheartedly. I also do blame the one judge who worked in the area sanctioning tournaments, because at the time you had people that were doing that part-time who should have checked out the rules himself and taken the initiative to call Decipher ahead of time, but he didn't. And as you may or may not know, I had a constructed deck that could have easily gone all the way and won me that grand prize. I had already destroyed my first opponent. I was well on my way to destroying my second opponent, but that's beside the fact. I had the banned combo and I got kicked out. And this is the way tournaments started going. It didn't happen all at once, because this was one of the few tournaments where Decipher screwed up at that time. We're talking close to the late 90s, but in the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, Decipher really dropped the ball. And when they switched from the first edition to the second edition and corrected a lot of the rules to the game and made them different in the second edition, you would think that it got better, but second edition killed the game for them and they got out of it. And the reason why that's important is because there's a group out there called the Continuing Committee, and they took up the guys and the reins of continuing the Star Trek customizable card game, as well as sanctioning all the major tournaments. And you would think that's a good thing, because here's a huge group of people that cared about the game and got together thinking, wow, okay, this is going to be run properly now because it's being run by gamers. Unfortunately, the people at the top of the food chain at the Continuing Committee started doing a terrible job enforcing rules, and they started banning cards left and right that most of us players had in our draw decks. I'll give you an example. They very quickly in the late 2000s, mid to late 2000s, banned Dixon Hill. And remember, these are all card names I'm giving you. If you have anything to do with the Star Trek customizable card game, you know what I'm talking about. I don't have time to go into the card types, but Dixon Hill, Genetronic Replicator, Horgon, Intermix Ratio, Jem'Hadar Shrouding, and that really sucks. If you're playing a Jem'Hadar or a Dominion deck, you're instantly fucked by not being able to have that. That is an integral part of the Jem'Hadar, and they decided to ban that with no explanation. Palertoff Alien Trader, a power card which helps you negate other cards in the deck. Q's Planet, which was a perfect mission to attempt to get some easy points, even with dilemmas under there. And the three that really pissed me off are these: Raise the Stakes, Red Alert, Rogueborg Mercenaries. No player ever had a problem with those three cards. In fact, I don't know anyone that I played against back in the 90s, into the 2000s, that didn't have one or all three of those card types in their draw decks. And we made no bones about it. Yeah, raise the stakes was a pain in the ass because if you lost the game, your opponent gets a card of their choice from your deck, but it is what it is. If you lose, you pay the price sometimes, and we all accepted that as players of the Star Trek card game. So as you can see, these entities that control things get it right at the beginning, but they all suffer from the same problems down the line, was they all get stupid, they're all run by idiots at the end, and they all decide to keep changing things because they can, because we're going to keep buying the product no matter what. Yes and no, it didn't work exactly for the Star Trek CCG, but the people that run the continuing committee, I don't understand them at all, and I've emailed them and tried to talk to them on Twitter, and they're pretty much dictators. It's just, how can you continue to have a game where people just want to play and have fun when you keep changing the rules, changing them the day before a tournament or the day of a tournament without telling anybody, and banning cards that everyone uses just because you don't like them? And that's the fact of the matter, because of people I've talked to that know people either at the continuing committee or Wizards of the Coast or Decipher, any of these card companies that have done this, there's just people that are also players that were probably butthurt because they lost in games to people that had those cards, and now they're in a position of authority, so they're using that authority to ban said cards. That's what it's about. People that are butthurt, that can't handle losing, that have decided, oh, that card's terrible because I lost to it. And people that use those cards are assholes, so fuck them. I'm taking those cards at a tournament play. Ha ha ha. That's what it is. That's all I have for today's show. I've rambled on about card companies long enough. If you have an opinion on this and you're a customizable card game player, please tell me in the comments below. I really like to know everyone's opinion on this one, because there's a lot of anger floating around right now. And if you check out the official Magic the Gathering feed on Twitter and look at some of the comments coming up under the revised list they've put up and some of the banned cards they've showed, there is a lot of people pissed off and angry. So it's not just a small thing. It's pretty widespread. It's, as I said earlier, it's Decipher all over again. Anyways, have a great day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Tell all your friends. Go find a blank concrete wall and spray paint Jason's Game Room on YouTube. Hell, I'm not condoning vandalism, but at the same time, I don't care. Peace out, everybody, and game on. Oh, yeah.